The webinar is starting now after this short musical interlude and some technical problems, but that's the beauty of live broadcast. I am Letizia Palmisano, an environmental journalist, and I am the moderator of today's roundtable. Welcome to today's panel discussion entitled Climate Resilience and Economic Sustainability in Kenya and Uganda, the role of the carbon credits in environmental conservation. Let me introduce you His Excellency, the Ambassador of Italy to Kenya, Roberto Natali.
Okay. Good morning to everybody. May I start?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Good. Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's time for leaving behind us the philosophical approach, which comes basically from the naturalists of the 17th centuries, in particular Sir Francis Bacon, according to which the knowledge of nature by the humankind is aimed at its domination. Much wiser it would be to espouse concepts coming from inspiring Asian philosophies and religions, based on the idea of a full harmony between mankind and nature and respect for it, which is also emphasized by many of the South American civilization that shined in those lands before Columbus. So, having this in mind, it's my pleasure today to inaugurate this roundtable focusing on the role of carbon credits in forest conservation. Conservation, this is the word we must use more and more in our days. I would like to start by quoting Professor Wangari Maathai, the Kenyan professor and activist internationally recognized for her unwavering struggle for democracy, human rights, and overall environmental conservation. On the occasion of the award ceremony of the Nobel Prize she received, she stated that there can be no peace without development, and there can be no development without the sustainable management of the environment in a peaceful and democratic space. This concept of a safe environment, of the necessary respect and protection of nature as a precondition for peace is today shared by many. Let's think, for instance, about how many conflicts stem from an inappropriate use of fresh water, which is more and more precious on the planet. Here in Nairobi, we all know very well how important the environment is and what an effort delegations from all over the world make within the United Nations premises in order to find common lines of action and, in a few words, to put into practice what Professor Maathai stated. The sustainable management of our environment is a key requirement to achieve development and ultimately peace. The Today Roundtable comes at a time when Kenya, like unfortunately other African countries, is facing some of the dramatic effects of climate change. In different seasons, we have seen drought and floods that have destroyed the harvests and homes, and people and animals have lost their lives. Kenya is addressing these issues also through a commitment to a low carbon and resource efficient development pathway. President Ruto has repeatedly appealed to Kenyans to support the government's tree planting exercise and increase the country's tree cover, an activity where the Italian cooperation is contributing through its support to the National Environmental Trust Fund. And some Italian private entrepreneurs are already engaged in planting trees to offer carbon credit facilities to other companies here in Kenya. Tree planting and forest protection are powerful and efficient ways to mitigate the effects of climate change. Italy is significantly engaged in reforestation efforts and the promotion of carbon credit mechanisms to mitigate the effects of climate change. As the permanent representative of Italy to UNEP here in Nairobi, I am deeply aware of the urgent need for collective action to protect our planet, and forests play a crucial role in mitigating climate change. My wish is that our gathering today testifies the shared commitment of our institutions, organizations, and civil societies towards combating climate change and protecting the environment, which is the only real matter that unites the peoples of the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Natali. Thank you very much. And now let me introduce you His Excellency, the Ambassador of Italy in Uganda, Mauro Massoni. Good morning, Ambassador.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. It is my privilege to address you today at this roundtable on climate resilience and the economic sustainability in Kenya and Uganda within the ASVIS festival dedicated to advancing sustainable development goals. Uganda is a country with rich biodiversity and incredibly diverse ecosystems, which, like other countries, is facing challenges in preserving its forests amidst the pressure of population growth, agricultural expansion, economic interest, and climate change. In Uganda, natural forests are being lost and degraded at one of the highest rates in the world, despite their importance for tourism and role they play in supporting other natural resource-based activity. Recently, the World Bank stated that without intervention, Uganda risks losing all its forests by 2030. Let me say that according to what I had the opportunity to see in my first 4 months of service in this country, I fear that Uganda will lose its forests even before 2030. But significant action have been adopted to preserve forests and protect the environment with a combination of policy measures, community engagement, enforcement mechanism, and international collaboration. The Uganda National Development Plan 3, 2021-2025, for example, aim at increasing forest coverage from 9.1 to 15%. Italy, like Uganda, recognized the urgent need to protect our planet's forest in the face of climate change and environmental degradation. Carbon credits play a key role in forest preservation, and green finance will be part of 2 agroforestry initiatives that the Italian Agency for Developing Cooperation is realizing in the eastern region of Uganda in collaboration with the Ministry of Water and Environment and with the European Union. This initiative worth 16 million euro. This commitment is also enshrined in the European Union-Uganda Forest Partnership Compact, forged during COP27 in 2020. The first 5 world to sign a forest partnership agreement with the European Union. Through these collaborative efforts, we have jointly embarked on ambitious conservation and restoration efforts that harness the potential of carbon credits to drive positive change, proving that addressing global challenges require collective and concerted efforts. Carbon credit initiative may unlock new sources of funding for conservation projects, attracting investments from international organizations, private sector entities, and carbon markets. This influx of capital may catalyze the scale-up of conservation efforts, leading to the protection of vital ecosystem and the restoration of the degraded landscape across Uganda. However, it is essential to recognize that the success of carbon credit projects depends on robust governance frameworks, community participation, and equitable benefits sharing mechanism. Sustainable forest management practices, such as agroforestry, sustainable agriculture, and ecotourism, must be integrated into conservation strategies to ensure long-term viability and resilience. I therefore want to wish this roundtable a fruitful debate capable of identifying the strategies for generating the future investment, innovation, and collaboration between governments, NGOs, and the private sector necessary to promote the green economy and support for carbon credit initiative, a fundamental instrument for the protection and regeneration of our forestry heritage. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador Mauro Massoni. Thank you very much. I remember that we are online, that it is possible to ask a question in chat for our panelists. And so please write if you have any questions in the chat. I remind also that this webinar is organized by the Italian Agency for Development Cooperation in collaboration with the embassies of Italy in Kenya and Uganda, the Northern Land Rangers Trust, the Ministry of Water and Environment of Uganda, and the Italian Institute of Culture in Nairobi, in the framework of Sustainable Development Festival organized by ASVIS. And today we are here to talk about a matter of the utmost importance. As we all, I think we all know, forests play a vital role in fighting climate change. Trees are natural filters and air purifiers, I could say. One of the main functions for humanity is the ability to absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. However, the rampant deforestation and degradation of forest ecosystems pose significant challenges to our environmental and socio-economic development. But also, we must recognize the value of conservation and restoration efforts, with a particular focus on the leveraging carbon credits. Measuring environmental impact is the first fundamental step for every organization to understand what actions to take to reduce its environmental footprint. However, some impacts cannot be completely cancelled, such as a certain level of emissions or water withdrawal. In this context, carbon credits come into play. I want to give you some information about carbon credits because maybe there is someone of people who are with us online that don't know what carbon credits are. There are two types of carbon credits markets. The voluntary markets, where the organization can purchase credits to offset their emissions, and the compliance markets, such as the European ETS system, which involve the largest companies in polluting sectors. Credits are also divided into categories: the emission reduction credits, which represent actual reductions, and the offset credits, which balance the emissions elsewhere. And carbon credits present significant advantages, such as incentivizing emission reduction, conserving biodiversity, financially sustainable projects. And today we are speaking about this. In fact, the object of the round table is to explore the role of carbon credits in promoting the conservation and the restoration of forest ecosystems, with a specific emphasis to experiences and strategies employed by the Italian Agency for Development Cooperation and these key partners in Kenya and Uganda. And so here we are to facilitate the knowledge exchange, identify the best practice, and catalyze collaborative efforts towards sustainable forest management and climate resilience. And so let me introduce you Mr. Catteridge, our first panelist, Mr. Issa Catteridge, sorry, that is the Assistant Commissioner, Forestry Planning and Development, Ministry of Water Environment, Government of Uganda. Welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Letitia. I hope that's the right pronunciation for the name.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, everyone. As already mentioned, I'm called Issa Katwesige, working with the Ministry of Water and Environment as Assistant Commissioner for Forestry, and I'm in charge of planning and development. So I'm glad to be here and also happy to share experience in terms of how everything is integrated into one whole within Uganda. And talking of yes, climate resilience and economic sustainability. Well, we've had in brief, we've had we have a legal and policy framework within Uganda that informs most of these things, and we've looked at it in a way that carbon credits. Of course, I'll bias myself to speaking in terms of the role of forestry and how is that is playing into delivering climate resilience. And given that the size of our economies, most of this is based on you'll find the lowest hanging fruit for any carbon credits or any carbon offset is basically the bulk of it is in forestry as the easiest way to do mitigation and adaptation at the same time. Yeah, so as a country, we have some legal and planning framework. For example, we've got the Climate Change Act, which was passed in 2021. Which sets gives us that commitment as a country to manage and coordinate impacts and interventions to do with climate change and how to go about that. Then we also have the National Forestry and Tree Planting Regulations, which were passed in 2016. Those regulations are intended to deliver commit all carbon credits, because issues of carbon projects to the approval of the minister, because this is some of this is an emerging issue that at the time of the passing of the National Forestry and Tree Planting Act in 2003, climate change was not really an issue, a major concern, and issues of carbon were not really that much talked about. But that said, we also have the NDC report for Uganda, like the planning framework, the nationally determined contributions guiding on setting targets on forest cover and emissions reduction for the country by the year 2030. We've so far had two NDCs submitted. Then we have a national RED Plus strategy, which was informed by a whole about 8 years of the readiness phase, putting in place a framework for all RED Plus related interventions, working with the social safeguards, the MRVs, monitoring, reporting, and verification tools, the benefit sharing arrangements, and of course the National RED Plus strategy and FRLs. So that in itself informs what we have in there, and now we're in that readiness result payments phase, and with the passing of the compliance mechanisms credits by the Paris Agreement. Of course, now we're seeing a lot of inflow of interest from different partners, different companies trying to come and explore options. But as a country, we're in the process of developing, because for the most part, a lot of these are actually sometimes too good to be true. and we're developing a framework which should be out probably by end of June, a regulation for mainly hanging on documentation, setting targets, and benefit sharing arrangements. Because with that, we should be able to know how much goes to the companies, how much goes to the farmer or the final beneficiary, how much goes to the government in terms of offsetting the NDC targets. And then looking at forestry as a whole, we have we conducted results restoration opportunities assessment methodology report for Uganda, a ROM report for Uganda, working with the IUCN and the World Resources Institute, where we divided the country into 7 forest landscape restoration zones. And within those, we're coming up with a number of projects that feed into that. But overall, we established about 8 million hectares of degraded forest landscapes, making them available for restoration with different interventions that match with the different locations in the country. So out of that, we set a commitment of 2.5 million hectares as part of the Bond Challenge commitment. And through that, it's mainly integrating forests into the different landscapes for the urban, for the farmlands, for the natural degraded forests, for plantation establishment, and then for industries, different locations, the urban setup without evicting people, but then bringing the forest into those landscapes. And now we treat the issue of carbon credits, the issue of carbon interventions as more of an addition, while observing the fact that trees or forests have all these other functions beyond just the carbon credits. And as it has been for quite some time, since about 2007, we've been having voluntary carbon interventions by different players. But until 2020, when we had, until COP, I think it was COP 26, when the voluntary, rather the compliance mechanism was passed, that yes, we are seeing a lot of the high-end interventions coming in, interest from different players to do restoration. But we believe even with the intervention that we're having with the European Union and the Italian cooperation in Uganda, we're looking at still carbon as a bonus to some of the interventions, because the biggest challenge that we've had in the past has been actually putting in place projects, especially for, those involving trees, whereby you have these interventions coming up, but the farmers struggle to maintain the trees, to make the trees survive. But then these carbon credits now come in handy with incentives to enable the farmers at least maintain the tree up to when they get the provisioning benefits, like picking fruits, picking whatever products they can pick from the trees, because ideally that has shortened the waiting period for the farmers to realize the benefits of the trees. So we don't treat it as because the misconception that we had previously from the different players, they created this impression that once you plant your trees, you don't mind, as in carbon credits will do everything. But now changing the mindset to make it clear that yes, it's an additional kind of benefit from the trees, but then the other functions of the trees remain. And even as we do, as a country, as we do the carbon credits, rather as we do the crediting system and the compilation, we're looking at it as yes, we were trying, because as a country we've prepared the national capital accounts that also put in place or reflect the other benefits or regulatory functions, the functions of forests that we're looking into as part of something that even the mainstream government should continue to fund, as a way of appreciating the contribution of these resources to the economy in terms of climate regulation, in terms of erosion control, in terms of pollination, all those other functions, and not putting the entire burden on carbon credits. And as I conclude, of course, given that we are at the starting point of most of these interventions involving several parties, we're also piloting in different places. And of particular interest to us is the intervention that we have in the eastern part of the country. We've chosen, aligned also, informed by the fact of the project, because as a ministry, we had already submitted that request to the Italian government to extend the same support that is on the western side of Kenya into the eastern part of Uganda, involving Karamoja, where we look at cash crops, tree crops for climate resilience, and also looking at all those benefits funded out of the carbon credits to that effect. And then when we got the European Union Forest Partnership funding for that particular program, we thought, yes, it could also extend further deeper into the country beyond Karamoja to cater for an entire landscape, creating a corridor for conservation of wildlife between Mount Elgon and Kidepo Valley National Park, while at the same time working with the communities in the intermediate in between to do their part on their own private land, given that we have a number of land tenure types for the country, where some of the land is owned communally, some of the land is privately owned, and then you also have areas protected by the Z of Parliament, passed by Parliament. So with that, we want to demonstrate the intervention and the involvement of everyone within the landscape to make a contribution, and in essence, in the background, while delivering on the Bond Challenge commitment, delivering on the SDGs, and restoring the forest cover to 24% by 2040. So it's a whole mix of things, but all contributing to one collective whole. Thank you for now. I hope that paints a picture of what.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very much.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting speech with several food for thought. I have a question, but I'll ask you later after I hear we hear our second panelist. And so let me introduce you, our second panelist, Mr. Mohamed Shibia, the Rangelands and Carbon Program Director, Northern Rangeland Trust. Good morning, Mr. Shibia. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Your Excellency. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much, Martina. Sorry. Thank you so much. And good morning, Your Excellency, and all protocol observed. My name is Mohamed Shibia. I work for Northern Rangeland Trust, NRC, but as a Rangeland and Carbon Project Director. First and foremost, we want to appreciate on behalf of our communities of Northern Kenya, the much big support that Italian Development Corporation has extended to us, supporting various nature-based solution options. And among those options, we have various options that serve as carbon links, carbon sinks, forest. We have rangelands, marine, various landscape types, and their restoration serve several roles in carbon sink, and therefore serving a big role on climate change, community development, and biodiversity conservation. Today, I will speak about Northern Rangeland Carbon Project, which is covering almost 1.9 million hectares of rangelands in northern Kenya. We accrue carbon credit from the amount of the carbon sequestered from the atmosphere and stored in the soil through the plant grazing management that nomadic pastoralists have been doing for many years. But the additional thing that this project has taught the herders is how they will cooperate and improve on their livestock movement so that on a rotational basis, at least one time over the growing season, their rangeland will stay and support growing grasses so that grasses will grow to their full height and deliver the service to the global community. And therefore, it has no stopping of livestock or people's livelihood, but rather when the community or the nomadic pastoralists come back for their grasses, they will meet more of their grasses, and also they can graze comfortably by sharing the big landscape. Here we are talking of more than 14 community conservancies, more than 5 community or ethnic tribes working together, restoring peace and restoring environment. The project is a 30 years period, and the first 10 years from 2010 to 2021, it was in the making, and actually it was engaged through the community consultation to get their consent. And so the first revenue that came through was in 2022 from the sale of 3.2 million verified emission reduction that yielded almost 23 million US dollars. But the arrangement in terms of the benefit sharing between the partners, we have 3 partners in this project, where we have NRT, we also have Native as the developer of the project, and the communities. Therefore, in that share, it is a 40-60 benefit share between the communities and the project development developer. And that arrangement is currently being revised and reviewed. And then further, that was about 14.6 million US dollars, and that was shared, between 60-40, supporting conservation operation, that is supporting the conservancy programs, including peace, governance, rangelands, and wildlife and environmental operation. We also have the 60% remaining, which actually is supporting any community initiative. These include various aspects like bursaries and business and so on. All these arrangements, the community have been part of this from the start. And most interestingly, at this point, before we move to the next slide, what I want to mention is that through the teaching and training of the communities, this project came way before the national legislation and remains a very global significant project that serves as a model for the pastoralists or nomadic people in Kenya, East Africa, and several millions other nomadic pastoralists that live on pastoralism as a means of livelihoods. And so it is a soil carbon removal project. And through various engagements, community also learned to set aside at least 5% of their net revenue so that it could serve as a county or national government levy. And we are happy national government today in Kenya, other than enacting amendments to the Climate Change Act last year, September, during the African Climate Week, Subsequently, there are various regulations that actually are being developed, and sooner or later will be rolled out. And we are happy this, project and the partners have been consulted over the years. Next slide, please. For the part of the community revenue, total revenue by now that we are to deliver to the community through their own community governance structure that we call Carbon Project Oversight Committee that oversee the compliance process and procedures. They are releasing to the community now a tune of Kenya shilling 1.7 billion, which actually, as I said, supporting the conservancy operation and community development. So the 60% of the community carbon fund support various social services, the community development. About the just first year, we have 24% of the spending supporting clean water provision, 19% provision of school fees through bursaries and scholarships, and the 17% through school infrastructure such as classroom, dormitories. Dormitories are places where nomadic children will spend their night, as their family members are highly nomadic, not like us, tracking the resource availability. And so education provision under that mobile nature is extremely difficult and expensive for the government. So the provision of the sleeping places through the dormitories and the right kind of classes, the reading material, lamps in the night, and so on, increase the children school enrollment and retention, which has been very, very cumbersome for the government in the past years. The other one is tourism and enterprises. These are aspects, that we have also learned a big lesson that community looks at two ways, like investment in the current time that gives revenue immediately, or something for social services like bursaries that I have mentioned. But at the same time, we have tourism and enterprises that are these are tourism facilities, banders, and so on, that are very expensive at the very beginning, but assure revenue stream. And we have example of many of these carbon projects currently, where we have tourist banders and so on, lodges, where from first investment, now they have increased bed capacity. They are doubling the income, and that income work stream will follow it. And so that means the particular community will diversify their livelihood, so that they will no longer just rely on livestock only, but rather rely on multiple options that are also climate change resilient. The other one is infrastructure, road to hospitals, a road to schools, and so on. Next slide. This project, as I mentioned, is first of the kind project. It is the first in the world using the methodology for soil removal, but also it has various accreditations. And as such, it has been granted triple gold accreditations. These are the benefits that I have already mentioned to the community, climate, and biodiversity, and it is one of only 21 projects in the world that we have today that are operational. Also, we have NCS Lighthouse Award, because actually for its purpose that I have just mentioned. And the most recent award, the project received during COP27 in Egypt. The other one is the CCBE, that is Community Climate and Biodiversity Accreditations. So combination of these accreditations, one, gives community more commitment to improve their project, incentivize their collective responsibility to restore their rangelands. For sure, if they cannot restore it to the original what it was like 40 years ago, we are quite certain that landscape or the rangelands capacity will be improved for ecological service provision, for the clean water, clean air. And we compare today and even 3 years ago when the first revenue stream came through is completely different, and uptake by the community is very positive, and the community within the project are also engaging everyone, within, and the herders who come from the outside on their plan, and they are collectively managing the project. Next. One more thing that I want to mention is the project received also a mention from our president, His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, at COP27 Egypt, where he mentioned the project and committed Kenyan government to the development of carbon credit policies and regulation, and the government commitment to climate change mitigation. And so a mention of the project gave community extra support that this project, carbon credit, is a real project, in that they will commit to themselves, their members, so that they will align with the government policies. And national government of Kenya has been engaging this community on various policy development that I have mentioned, right from climate change amendment, and also most recent one, carbon credit market regulation. Next. Good. We have, this is a project within NRT. NRT is the proponent of the project. Communities are project participants or implementers. And then we have the Native, which is based in the US. But Native has been a very supportive partner, supporting us in the development of projects, supporting us in community engagement, training, and awareness creation, but also supporting us in engaging government and informing their policy direction, because they have a very good experience working in the world, and they avail those as benefit to the community and all partners, including our government. And therefore, with those few remarks, I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. We have also a website, and we can always reach. And so the support that we have been getting through the Italian Development Corporation has been supporting rangeland program in Samburu, Laikipia, Isiolo, Baringo County, and all those, whether it is for the wildlife and so on, adds so much to the carbon credits communities are generating, and are part of our monitoring, reporting, and verification. So we have opportunities to expand the project further from the existing 1.9 million hectares, and that will cover more of the rangelands and another additional 4 million hectares. So hopefully in the next 2 years or so, through the consultation with the communities and their partners, stakeholders, we expect 6 million hectares of rangelands brought under this incentive or restoration initiative. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation.
Thank you very much. I would like to remind online participants that they can send questions using the questions and answers box. Mr. Shibia, I have a question for you. The work you do is really very interesting. As we said at the beginning of the webinar, today's online roundtable aims to facilitate the exchange of knowledge. Many people connected to the webinar only know about NRT's work remotely. For others, today is the first time they ever heard about it, maybe. In your opinion, what is the most important lesson that those who listen to it today can learn from your work?
Thank you so much. Biggest lesson we have learned is that if we give indigenous communities knowledge, skills that they will require to bring a change, they will remain a change maker. And so, talking of the carbon project or the restoration programs that we are implementing through the Italian Development Corporation. So what most very important we are doing is we are availing what community need most, which is the knowledge, the tools to make a change. So NRT, for example, is an umbrella organization that brings together almost 45 community conservancies, and community conservancies can join at their own wish, and can also live. And it is the community indigenous elders that actually admit their members to the umbrella association. Therefore, by the very fact that they come together, that gives a very good platform for engagement, guiding their policy direction, and also gaining collective action. Because today, what we need to reverse restoration is collective action, partners, and also at the same time at the community level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have also a personal question for Mr. Issa Ketwisage. The carbon credit system has also been criticized. Among the criticisms, some speak of green colonialism, and others say that the system needs to be rethought. What are our thoughts on this? How do you think the system could be improved?
Thank you. Thank you. And actually, I also want to thank Peter for the elaborate submission. There is a lot to learn for Uganda, because as it is, whereas we are benchmarking on the same project, our side is not yet taken off. So I think there will be a lot to pick from northern Kenya and replicate on the Ugandan side. That said, I mentioned about the carbon credits, that yes, as a country, we are developing a regulation, because for the most part, before that, most of the carbon interventions were actually voluntary credits involving the work of NGOs. And with the opening up for the compliance mechanisms, we see a lot of criticism now coming along with alongside with the proposed projects and branding them as greenwashing. But we believe on our side that yes, the regulation should be able to help us to draw the lines. Once it comes out, it should draw the lines in terms of who does what and who gets what. But then also it shouldn't be an issue of where we become complacent and assume that carbon credits will do it all. We're mainly promoting these interventions for the other benefits as well, in terms of extractives that are picked from these. We have a number of commercial crops that we're looking at. We have trees like shea, like cashew, mangoes, and some of the indigenous tree species for their obvious benefits, and then aligning the benefits based on what the communities need and are used to. So as it is, it's not approaches to make sure that carbon as an intervention is not given undue, unnecessary attention that makes people relax on the other benefits. But then it's something that we believe in fact, even in terms of the messages about carbon, how it's being projected, is to manage expectations, first of all, but then also interest people into knowing that trees all these interventions will perform as many other benefits as possible, and what comes from the carbon should be more of additional, because we believe in this additionality, and it's a contribution, it's an addition to other benefits from the investments that are being made. Yeah.
Thank you. There is another question. It's not mine. It's for you. This question, I received this question by email. You mentioned, the mail says, that Uganda is preserving 8 million hectares for restoration. What was it, or is it challenging for your government to sensitize people and the local community about the importance of conservation?
Yes, thank you. What we have is that, yes, we have 8 million hectares, which was identified during the restoration opportunities assessment, like to draw a forest landscape restoration map for the country to know which areas need urgent intervention more than the others, and in terms of ranking, where to go. But what we determined as realistic for the bond challenge was 2.5 million hectares to be restored by 2030. And it's the same commitment to the AFRI 100, the 2.5 million hectares. So it is indeed a challenge, and you'll find that from experience, we've determined that, yes, people need to be mobilized and sensitized before within the constituencies that they belong to. The packaging, because the 2.5 million hectares includes forest plantations for the purpose of plantations, and making sure that whatever acreage is on plantation can be sustained through plantation for the offtake, as in by providing offtake of these products that there is a return on investment, so that whoever is investing there continues to invest there in a cyclic way, looking at it as a renewable resource. And then we have for the urban, where we're engaging with the cities and all these municipalities and towns for the purpose of the interventions that can thrive in town. And then for the farmland, that is the bulk of our projects. Most of the traditional forestry projects have been mainly rural-based, and now that we're moving into, the urban space, but for the bulk, it's been in the rural, looking at agroforestry, looking at restoration planting, even within the government central forest reserves, where government has natural forests and plantations for the same purpose. And then interesting the private sector to be licensed for land holding on government land to do commercial plantations. So yes, for the cycle within which the trees are doing that, yes, we do that. But we've also moved beyond government to include, to interest the private sector, the corporate private sector, the banks, the telecoms, and all that to be involved in this campaign of making sure that we deliver on our 2.5 million hectares through different interventions, but pointing out forestry as the lowest hanging fruit. And according to the Climate Change Act, as well as the National Environment Management Act, we have we've set a commitment that is going to be mandatory with the time for all players to offset their carbon footprint. And we're interesting them into doing this beyond CSR, such that when the time comes, because currently it's only mandatory for government to climate proof the different government budgets for ministries, departments, and agencies, but it's going to become also mandatory for the non-state. And through that, we are building partnerships with the private company, the private sectors, with the cultural and religious institutions for the purpose of mobilizing communities and giving them the kickstart for connecting between that rich private sector in availing planting materials, while they got a lot of land in their schools, in the churches, and the cultural palaces for that purpose, and recycling the same information. The kingdoms have a lot of land, and they have that religious following of the subject, and signed partnerships with the Interreligious Council of Uganda, where different cultural institutions, rather different religious institutions come together, and we mainstream the messages into what they are doing. But the private sector is also helping more in doing media swaps, availing airtime on radio and TV, because the impact is much broader than when you focus on a geographical scope. But to take it also beyond as a way of changing the mindset and working with schools, yes, the idea is to reach out to as many people as possible, but then keep repeating the messages such that it becomes, you will build a critical mass that hold the graders accountable, but then also make it a responsibility at household level to do as much as they can. For example, we have the Running Out of Trees campaign as a tool, as a vehicle to deliver these commitments, where the target is for every Ugandan at least to plant 1 tree every year, which takes the tree beyond the commercial benefits, but look at it in terms of an additional household member, as a pet, as something that people hold dear beyond the extraction. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I can read that there is a question in the chat from Marion. The question is for Mr. Shivia, and say there is for NRT, what specific activities does the community undertake to achieve their goals for the combating carbon?
Thank you so much, Letizia, and our audience. Project is supporting various activities where it is communities. Particularly at this point, I want to recognize women's role that actually for years have been neglected in the restoration. So what women are currently doing is within the plan. One, we have plant growth management that covers almost 1.9 million hectares. Planned in the sense that communities sit together, approve their livestock movement plan, and give a consent for its implementation. And this is done by community themselves, knowing, the benefit, and the whole process is intensified because picking up has been very easy because there are stronger component of indigenous culture and the governance. So other than that, we have places that grass seeds in their soils have been depleted completely. So what type of the grasses that are there are not good enough to sequester more carbon from the atmosphere and store in the soil. They have short roots, and also short above ground height, and only continue growing for less than 3 weeks. And so their value of sequestering carbon and storing in the soil is very limited, because even without grazing, they will disappear, and so it means they will not store enough carbon. So what is the project doing? The project is, one, increasing the good type of the grasses that we have on the rangelands. Where we have grasses, they increase cooperation of herders to manage that. But where we don't have those grasses, women, men, children are all going out collecting grasses where they have, and then they come and do planting. They do dig, and then they put more grasses there, and then they grow, and then they continue collectively supporting the grasses to grow to their height, so that they can put on grasses, and then they can reseed themselves. So other than that aspect of reseeding, control of invasive species, which are especially woody species, when they increase the number, the grasses disappear. So they also manage that control. And the other thing is also settlement planning. Community agree, they have a temporary shelters. They agree where to put, when to put, and how long to stay there. Because when they stay, that is very good for rangelands. Because when what is not good for rangeland is staying there forever, which again is, if for example anyone wants them to stay there forever, then that is even against their life. So we are not controlling people's mobility. We are rather increasing people's to move, but to move in a coordinated way. So in this case, I want to speak to one criticism that Letizia, you mentioned about the criticism on the greenwash. For sure, I agree that I acknowledge we have various criticisms. Many of these criticisms are discredited, but we cannot push them aside. They help improve the project, improve the way we are doing things. One example is my colleague Isa mentioned about national government regulations. Just like in Uganda, also in Kenya, government is very serious and developed and committed to the process that communities have the right regulation. But most important as a project, what we are doing is improving monitoring, reporting, and verification. How is it possible, Letizia, wherever you are, you can independently verify claims that I am making to the question that what the project is doing? What is the additional thing that I'm explaining? How can we verify this independently from any person who is interested? So we are, as the technology is available, remote sensing, Internet of Things, we are availing where project is working, impact to the community, evidence, so that anyone can independently verify. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter Koyan.
Sorry, I am Mohammed Shibia. Now I'm back.
Okay.
Peter has left it to me. Thank you.
Okay, I can't see you, and so I wasn't sure. There is another question from Samuele Petrazzani in the chat. I can read it. My question is about Karamoja in Uganda, I say. The region is facing a significant demographic pressure, land grabbing, mineral extraction, and even wildlife-human conflict is increasing. What can be the key for a successful activity of reforestation or conservation, and how carbon credit can enter in such a context? The question, I say, it's for Mr. Yes?
Yes, thank you, Letitia and Samuel, for the question. Yes, I'll make an attempt to respond. Like I mentioned earlier, of course, there is a lot to learn from the Kenyan side, because our project is not even at inception, but almost there in terms of securing the funding. But generally, of course, we have a number of interventions that happen within Karamoja, and we're trying to be now. We've been trying to deliver them as a collective whole. When you look at the demography on the Kenyan side, it's not so different from the Ugandan side. So ideally, there is a lot to pick from there, especially for the carbon projects. because there've been these other interventions. As the Ministry of Water and Environment, we've set up region offices in the region to basically continue engaging with the farmers, with the communities, and the local people. Of course, those are the challenges notwithstanding. What we are trying to do is to create a critical mass of people that believe that they are responsible for their own well-being, because previously there had been a mindset built there that without nomadism, then not much can happen. It's not traditionally been a cropping community, but then with that, government has tried to set up dams and valley tanks, improving our water infrastructure in the place, so that it does both crop and animal rearing. Because as ministry, we're actually looking at 2 irrigation schemes. There is one in Namalu, but when a number of valley tanks, of dams for multi-purpose use, for water for multi-purpose use, and using such framework, using such infrastructure to organize communities, and then also, as government does its side of the military, the side of disarmament, and trying to engage the local leadership, we also work with the masses to have them realize the benefits of taking matters into their own hands without doing so much of extractives, a lot of land use conversion, but doing the investments that are compatible with the kind of environment, the kind of climate that they work with. It's going to be our first time implementing a carbon project in that landscape, but for the other interventions that involve the use of these commercial crops, like Gamma Arabica, like cashew is conducive for the place. There is I forget the species name, but then these are the interventions. I mean, other species that we're trying to domesticate, Osiris, though being long-term, and working with communities such that they realize this. The advantage that comes with carbon credits is that farmers are given kind of the incentives to hold on, the incentives to wait for the trees materialize and pick from that. Of course, there is no single silver bullet that will deliver this overnight. It's just through engaging as many stakeholders as possible. And for that region, of course, there is a lot of confidence that has been built with the development partner community, especially including the Italian cooperation has been in that landscape for quite some time. The religious institutions have done a lot of work. And we've also been involved with other projects, because water is a meeting point for most of these communities. And as the institution responsible for that, there is a lot of confidence. And like I mentioned, we can only do what we can to interest people, to commit them to what they are doing, make the big graders accountable until we have enough critical mass to make things happen. I can't commit that it's going to happen overnight. It's something that where we stand today is not where we were 20 years ago. As the place becomes more peaceful and more people get interested in the interventions on their own land. But as I mentioned, yes, everyone has to play their role, and we're committing more to the indigenous species of the place, but also make commercial sense out of them beyond the animals, and contain like the wrestling and the movement from one place to another, and eventually we should be able to get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. we can change a bit the program. And so I'll pass the floor to Ms. Elena Gallenca, Director of Italian Institute of Culture of Nairobi. Good morning.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon to everybody. So since we are at the end, I think it's also time to say thank you to all the people who have been part of the organization of this event. So all the staff of Italian Cultural Institute, Italian Cooperation, Italian Embassy in Nairobi and in Kampala. And also a huge thank to the speakers and to the moderator. So I'm very happy that we had a successful webinar about topics that are surely interesting. And, you know, many of us heard things like carbon credits, but we really don't know what they are.
Yes.
And so I think that it's interesting to have events like this where we can really share the knowledge that we have in Italy, the knowledge that there is in Kenya, the knowledge that there is in Uganda. So I really thanks everybody again, and I hope that we are going to have more occasion to work all together and talk about important topics.
Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay,
very well,
so,
very well.
Microphone restored. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of the participants. As we draw our roundtable discussion to a close, I really want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you, and especially to the speakers. I think the dialogue that we had today has been enlightening and based on the experiences that we as Development Cooperation have been supporting and are implemented both in Kenya and Uganda. And from the words we heard from the speakers, as a matter of fact, I think some of the initiatives have, as it was said, a border between the two countries, but are tackling opportunities / issues which are very similar. The experience shared from Kenya and Uganda, as it was said, have reinforced the importance of reforestation, which definitely is the starting point. I mean, should be the main target. The creation of carbon credits is a consequence which comes after, as it was said, the efforts that need to be made in the reforestation and conservation and restoration. The discussion, I think, has been also highlighting and interesting because it has touched on one side potential critical elements of the carbon credits. It has been mentioned, the greenwashing, etc. And this is leading these two countries also to intervene in adopting regulations within the countries. And I think that this is crucial also because on one side, carbon credits, as we all know, are one of the most efficient instruments in terms of the green finance world. But on the other hand, there needs to be a regulation whereby there is a distinction for those entities, and I'm thinking of those companies, especially the private sector, who are intervening in this market as traders of a value which is marketable. And in this case, I think a specific regulation is necessary. Different regulation should be for those who are really using the carbon credits for offsetting the carbon emissions that their industry is creating. In the process of a transition, an energetic transition, which is a process that is brought along universally. Now, as development cooperation amongst the two countries, we're managing a total amount of grants funding these initiatives between Kenya and Uganda of around 24 million euros. The carbon credit for us has a very, very relevant impact because as we have seen, it is generating revenues, it is generating cash, it is generating extra cash, which is, if well employed, is ensuring the sustainability of all the initiatives that we are funding. Because one of the major concerns of any donor country, is that once the contribution is expired, what happens? Now, the carbon credits are obviously being regulated in the market and are generating additional revenues that are ensuring the sustainabilities of our interventions. Our interventions are very much as it was shown and said by our speakers, are basically concentrated on providing support to the governments, to the communities, because who are the beneficiaries of all of this and other carbon credits? We've seen it in virtual and good initiatives. The beneficiaries are the communities. But then you have the institutions. Institutions are supported in the ability to also be aware and regulate on one side, and to generate carbon credits that needs to be certified. The certification is a crucial process, and not all of the activities on reforestation can generate carbon credits. So this needs to be very well planned, addressed. The governments are other beneficiaries, and obviously the private sector. The private sector is definitely the accelerator of the whole process in terms of action against climate change. We all know that none of the contribution from development cooperation assistance can be able on its own to support the action that is necessary. So in closing, I think and I hope this webinar has started a discussion among ourselves to enlighten the fact that either the partnerships are really strengthened, starting with the communities and with our partner countries, together with the support of development partners, and Italy is definitely on the side of Kenya and Uganda in this effort. And either this partnership is really linked up, including virtual and participants of the private sector, or the efforts are risking to not allow us to obtain the goals that we ought to obtain for the future generations and for ourselves. I would stop here and thank you, and apologies for the issue on the microphone.
The beautiful of broadcast, we said. I want to say that other questions are arriving, but the time is going to finish, and so you can. I say to the attendants, you can send the question to press.nairobi at ax.gov.it. You can find the mail in the chat. Now we are going to finish. We are going to close. And so, first of all, I want to say thank you to all the participants in the webinar, the ambassadors, the panelists, the guests, and those who followed us online. We, in these more or less 90 minutes, we explored climate resilience and the economic sustainability in Kenya and Uganda, the role of carbon credits in environmental conservation. Video of today's webinar will be available in a few days on the AX YouTube channel, and you can find the link of the YouTube channel in the chat. And so I want to reply my thanks to everybody, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
everyone for
everyone.
participating. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.